scary time for you. This is Morse Cruenta. I have collected for you 5 dark and scary stories about Ukrainian villages. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you enjoy this kind of content. Your support helps me create more stories like these. Thank you. I wish you were truly wretched watching. Years have passed since those events. Some of them have faded from my memory, while others are burned into my mind forever. Regardless, I want to tell you a story so strange that I doubt I will ever forget it. Every summer, I was sent to my grandma Anna's house in the countryside. But unlike most other kids, I didn't like it there at all. For one thing, I was a city boy, accustomed to urban life. Out there in the village, there was absolutely nothing to do. I didn't want to leave my friends behind, but my trips to Grandma Anna's were never up for discussion. No matter how much I begged my parents not to send me, they would only laugh. "Don't be silly," they'd say. "The fresh air will do you good. And besides, Grandma Anna misses you. You're going, and that's that." "You're going, and that's that," I would mutter under my breath. "I don't have any friends there. What am I supposed to do? This might be great for others, but for me, it's just sitting around and waiting for summer to end." But the truth was, the real reason I hated the village was entirely different. All the local kids looked at me as if I were a leper, calling me the witch's grandson. Some of the more aggressive ones even threatened to beat me up if they caught me near the river, claiming they didn't want to swim where the witch's grandson had been. I couldn't do anything about it. There were too many of them, and I was alone. Strangely enough, I did have one friend at first, a chubby kid named Nick, about my age, whom everyone else teased and called Bun. At the start, we got along well. He'd come over and we would spend time together, just passing the time, so to speak. But as soon as the other kids realized he was hanging out with me, they pressured him to stop. They fed him all sorts of lies, pretending they were coming from me. After that, Nick stopped coming by altogether, so I spent the entire summer alone in the yard, entertaining myself as best I could. I was terrified to leave the yard at the time, for fear of what they might do to me. But when Nick did come by, he told me why exactly they hated me so much. And I have to say, it was a fascinating story.
It turned out it wasn't about me, but my grandmother. People had been spinning all sorts of filthy rumors about her for years, blaming her for everything under the sun. As I later found out, there were reasons for it. A long time ago, when my grandmother first moved to the village, eerie things began to happen. Just a month after she arrived, half of the livestock on the local farm died. No one understood why. They walked into the barn in the morning and found the cows dead. No marks on their hides, no explanation for the deaths. But just before these events, my grandmother had been seen near the farm. Naturally, the local cattleman who saw her immediately told everyone in town that the newcomer, Anna, was a witch. The village, which hadn't seen anything interesting in years, instantly latched onto the news and began discussing it constantly. People would approach my grandmother and ask her right to her face, "Is it true? Did you kill the cattle?" calling her a leper and a witch. But the locals didn't know that the dead cows were only the beginning. About 4 days later, that same cattleman, the one who had been too observant, was found dead behind a shed, impaled with a pitchfork. Naturally, an uproar ensued. Who could have done such a thing? He was a simple, kind man who helped everyone, and he didn't have any enemies. The investigation turned up no culprits. Instead of looking for the real killer, people immediately remembered my grandmother. They didn't call her a witch to her face anymore. They were too afraid of what might happen to them. But they gossiped about her constantly, sitting in their kitchens and dragging her name through the mud.
No sooner had the village recovered from that incident than 2 more people vanished without a trace. Again, panic and chaos. They searched, but couldn't find them. What was even stranger was that both of them disappeared from inside their own homes. Their housemates claimed nothing had happened. They'd gone to sleep, and by morning, they were just gone. One woman, unable to handle it anymore,
went to confront my grandmother. People say she arrived filled with rage, carrying a heavy club, and began beating my grandmother, screaming, "You cursed witch! Where did you come from? You don't belong here. If you don't leave, we'll get rid of you ourselves." She beat my grandmother so badly that she had to lie in bed for a month, unable to stand. Luckily, my grandfather was there to help her. Once my grandmother recovered, a string of events swept through the village. First, everything in everyone's gardens withered. Then, all the fish in the pond and the river died, floating belly up. One night, 2 fires broke out. A haystack meant for the collective farm burned, and the local community center went up in flames. The dogs howled for nights on end, making people believe the end was near. Of course, these events weren't entirely critical. Some livestock remained, and people had reserves in their barns. But deep, gnawing fear had settled in their hearts forever. The locals decided to deal with my grandmother in a devious way, fearing that if they touched her, they might end up paying the price and taking the whole village with them. They decided to drown my grandfather so that my grandmother would suffer, as she was pregnant with my father at the time. The men lured my grandfather to the river, hit him over the head with a rock, and threw him in. They agreed among themselves to stick to the same story. They hadn't seen anything, they didn't know anything.
My grandmother, through unknown means, learned the news and rushed to the scene. The men were still there, drinking on the riverbank. They say my grandmother fell to the shore, clawing at the bloodied earth and wailing like a wild animal. The men were frozen, terrified. How could she have known? Then, my grandmother suddenly jumped up, looked at them, and ran along the river to find my grandfather. Some say she found him dead, and unable to accept the loss, resurrected him. Others say he was barely alive. Regardless, my grandmother nursed him back to health. Once my grandfather recovered and learned of the 2 secrets, that the locals had tried to kill him and that the cemetery was filling with more graves than ever, they stopped bothering her. They hated her with a powerless, bitter rage, and she left them alone. I didn't know if these stories were true, and it was creepy to hear them from Nick. My grandmother wasn't like that. She was kind. But Nick himself told me that in the village, you couldn't trust the rumors, because if you sneezed at one end of the village, they'd say you were dead by the time it reached the other. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on the porch watching my grandfather polish his car. "Grandpa, why are you cleaning it?" "Well, why do you think? We're going to the store soon." "Can I come with you?" I asked excitedly. "No, not this time. Grandma and I are going at night while you're sleeping." "Oh," I groaned. "Don't worry. We're going far, and it'll be for a long time. When we get back, you'll be waking up just in time." "Well, can you bring me something tasty?" "Talk to your grandmother about that. She's in charge of such things." I bolted off the porch and ran into the house to find her. She was in the kitchen washing dishes. "Grandma, are you really going to the store?" The smile instantly faded from her face. "What store?" "Grandpa said you were going to the store tonight and not taking me. I wanted you to bring me a treat." "Oh, did he?" she asked. "Yeah." "Fine, I'll buy you something, my little gold." She leaned in. "Go tell your grandfather he's an old fool." I ran back outside. After I delivered the message, he grumbled under his breath while tinkering under the hood. "Grandpa," I asked him, "what store are you going to? Everything's closed at night."
"This one is open 24/7, he said. "That's where we're going." "Oh, that's a shame I can't go. I'm so bored sitting in the yard all day." "Well, go for a walk then," he said. "I don't know why you sit there wearing out the porch steps." "I don't want to," I said, with regret. I never told my grandparents how the local kids treated me. It was my secret. And besides, if Nick was right, my grandmother might stir up such trouble that I'd end up regretting it. So I just walked inside to watch TV. It was at least some kind of entertainment. I watched TV until evening. Then my grandmother came up to me and asked, "When are you going to sleep?" "I don't want to yet," I replied. "Well, let's have some supper, then go to bed." I went to the kitchen, where fried potatoes, milk, and white bread awaited me. While I ate, my grandmother gave me instructions. "Nick, your grandfather and I are going to the store. You'll be home alone.
don't open the door for anyone, no matter who comes." "Okay," I said. "If you get hungry, there are curd pies on a plate under a towel. Eat those." "Okay," I said again. "And if you hear any sounds from the attic, ignore them. Stay calm and don't be afraid. And you are not to go up to the attic. Do you understand?" "Yes," I replied. The attic was a place I'd never been. It was strictly forbidden. I wasn't even allowed to touch the stairs that led up there. Once, I had tried to sneak up to look through the keyhole, but my grandmother returned and scolded me so severely that I made it a rule never to do it again. But my grandmother went up there often, sometimes disappearing for half a day. I didn't know what she did there. Whenever I asked, she'd say she was busy, or just wave her hand and change the subject. The attic never really interested me. Occasionally something would thud or stomp around up there, but it was usually quiet.
But now, the moment she told me not to go up there, I knew this was my chance. I knew where the key was kept, usually in the wardrobe under some rags on the second shelf. As soon as I heard the front door close and the car drive away, I waited another 5 minutes, just to be sure. I turned on all the lights in the house, feeling less scared, and went to my grandmother's room to find that coveted key. With trembling hands, I opened the wardrobe and reached under the rags. Success! I quickly walked to the stairs, looked at the door I was about to open, and felt a surge of excitement. I was breaking the only rule my grandmother had ever set. I climbed the stairs, inserted the key, and turned the handle. What I saw took my breath away. The attic was filled with items. They were everywhere. In the center stood a strange, eerie altar made of stone. It was a massive slab covered in mysterious objects, and above it loomed a horned creature carved in stone, its hands reaching toward the altar. I held my breath and stepped inside. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me with a terrifying bang. I jumped, and my heart raced. I grabbed the handle, thinking I was trapped, but the door opened easily, and I stepped back onto the stairs. Curiosity was stronger than fear. I didn't go back inside, but I scanned the attic from the doorway. Besides the altar, there were many curious things. There was a table with a book of incredible size. It looked very old. The floor was covered in strange symbols, circles, and drawings. Dried roots, leaves, and unknown plants hung from the ceiling. But there was something else. I couldn't see clearly behind the altar, and I was too afraid to walk in. I could have sworn that the stone creature, which had been staring at the altar, had changed its gaze. It now seemed to be looking directly at me. I decided not to risk it. I closed the door and put the key back exactly where I found it. After that, sleep was impossible. I sat in the living room watching TV until dawn. My grandparents hadn't even finished entering the house before I got a lecture for sneaking into the attic. "So, Nick, you went into the attic after all?" my grandmother asked, walking toward me. I didn't try to lie. What was the point if she already knew? "Yes, I knew it," she replied. "And what interesting things did you see?" "Just things," I answered vaguely. Well, all right. You saw them. But let me tell you this. You saw them too early, of course. But listen to me. Don't tell anyone about this. "Okay," I said, relieved. I had expected a much harsher punishment. "Good. Now, come to the kitchen. I brought you some treats." I jumped off the chair and ran to the kitchen, where my grandfather was already unpacking the bags. As I grabbed my oranges and fruit, I noticed one detail. Besides the fruit and a few bags of salt, there was nothing else. I had a question. Why had they gone to the store at all if they didn't buy anything? Usually, my grandmother would buy enough to last a month. I went to my grandfather, who was back in the yard working on the car. "Grandpa?"
Yeah?
"Why did you go to the store? You didn't buy anything." He stopped his work, looked around cautiously, and whispered, "What do you mean we didn't buy anything? We brought you treats." "But that's it? Why did you really go?" He walked over and sat down beside me. "Grandson," he said, seriously, "your grandmother doesn't want you to know this, but if I tell you, you must promise never to tell anyone. You've already been in the attic, so you've seen things, right?" "Right," I whisper back. "Then listen. Your grandmother practices dark magic. All those stories in the village, they're true.
And don't think she doesn't know what people say about her. She knows everything. You can't fool her. She also knows those local kids don't like you. She's just waiting for a reason to snap at them. You don't have to pretend you're staying in the yard because you don't want to go out. I know why you do it. You don't want to look bad. But your silence is just letting those kids get away with it. If you told her, she'd solve that problem in 10 minutes. She's kind and caring with us, but with strangers, she doesn't mess around. And what will become of her? I asked. He hesitated for a second. Well, it's a long story. Your grandmother is a hereditary witch. She inherited this gift from her grandmother, who lived to be 120. 120?
Yes. Witches live a long time because they can extend their lives. They know things and possess powers, but they only do it to postpone the suffering that awaits them. A witch feels her death approaching and begins searching for an heir because she is obligated to pass the gift on. Not just pass it, but teach the successor how to use it. If they don't, they die a very long, very painful death. Some say the evilest ones can't even die until they smash a hole in their roof so their soul can leave their body. And even then, your grandmother says that's nothing compared to what awaits them down there. He pointed a finger at the ground. Why are they punished? Because it's forbidden. Normal people shouldn't possess such knowledge. And if you do, after you die, you have to pay the bill in full. That's why many refuse to inherit it. You might have 100 years of fun here, but you'll pay for it for eternity down there. Your grandmother is very strong. She's been handed both power and knowledge. So grandson, if she offers you this gift, do not accept it. Run from it. It brings nothing but misery. I didn't know what to say, so I repeated my question about the store. Grandpa winced. The store we went to? It's not an ordinary one. I've never been inside, but your grandmother has described it to me. It's not meant for me, and frankly, I don't want to go. It has no windows, and it's impossible to find unless you know where and when to look. It only appears at crossroads of old roads where terrible things have happened. It appears for one night, and all the dark spirits go there to shop. They have everything. Ancient relics, rare herbs that don't even grow anymore, skulls, teeth, all sorts of things. But there's one difference. They don't pay with money. They pay with human souls. And as your grandmother says, not all souls are equal. Some aren't worth a bunch of parsley, while others are so valuable you could buy half the store. I don't know how they determine the value, and I don't want to know. What happens if a normal person walks in? I don't know. But remember, no matter how much you love your grandmother, do not accept her gift or her curse. It might sound like everything will be great and you'll have everything you ever dreamed of, but it will bring you so much trouble that you'll regret it forever. How does she pass it on? It depends. If a witch just wants to get rid of it, she just touches you and says the words. But if it's family, it's a long, tedious process. She'll invite you up to that altar, perform some rituals, and you'll inherit the gift, along with her demons and her knowledge. She'll teach you how to use it, how to cast spells, which, honestly, is just about saying the right words. Once you have the power, your words will have weight. She'll even take you to a coven to introduce you. Then, once she's taught you everything, she'll drop dead. That's it. He looked at me intently. But do not agree under any circumstances. She told me how much time she has left. You can come here for another 4 years, but after that, don't you ever step foot in this house again. And if she sends you gifts, don't touch them. Avoid contact with her. I'll try to talk you into coming back, but don't listen to me. Tell your parents whatever you have to, just don't come back. She brings only horror and pain for an eternity. Aren't you afraid she'll be mad at you for telling me? He laughed. Let her rage all she wants. She already knows about this conversation. She knows she can't pass it on to you, but they say they have to try. So, live your life and remember my words. I don't have much time left. Your grandmother told me exactly how long I have. I'll be here until next autumn. After that, it won't matter anymore.
Where does what we call reality end? And where does that abyss begin? the one even the bravest fear to gaze into. We live in our own cozy little world, firmly believing in the laws of physics and logic. But you only need to crack the door open just a little, and it all crumbles into dust. It leaves you alone with something that has no place in any human textbook. Try telling someone about it. The moment you start to speak, pity flashes in their eyes. They think you're overworked, or perhaps your imagination has simply run wild. So, you fall silent, because you understand it's easier to be branded a madman than to try and prove that the darkness knows how to stare back at you. That secret now lives inside me like a splinter. It reminds me, every time the lights go out, that the world is not at all what it seems at first glance, and that some doors are better left unopened. There are things you can choose to believe or not, but they don't cease to exist. They are simply waiting with infinite patience for you to take that first step toward them. I would like to tell you a story that happened a long time ago in a village. A story my grandfather told me. After that incident, all the villagers moved away, and no one lives in that place anymore. For the sake of the narrative, I will tell this story in the first person. My village wasn't far from the city, but it was bordered by forest on 2 sides, and a swamp on the 3rd. The village was quite large, about 60 houses, and nothing about it stood out. We had lived there peacefully for years, going about our business, bothering no one. But on one sweltering July day, an event occurred that completely changed the course of our lives. I was weeding the garden when I heard a shout echo through the whole village. "Alex drowned!" Naturally, I dropped everything and ran out to the street, where neighbors, just as curious as I was, were already gathering around a local man named Max, the one who had raised the alarm. "Where did he drown?" one of the locals asked. "In the swamp, near the rotting birch tree." "What were you even doing out there?" "We wanted to cut across. We didn't want to walk all the way around the edge. We were walking along when we reached a clearing. Alex just stepped onto it and instantly vanished. Gone under. I hit the deck and shoved my hands into the hole, but he was already gone. Sucked straight to the bottom." "I see," another one said. "Well, first, let's go see where Alex disappeared." God, I hate the swamps. They are treacherous places. You can walk the same path every single day, and nothing happens. But one day, you'll inevitably slip. And our swamp was terrifying even to approach. It was ancient. It existed long before the village ever did. They say the more people it claims, the more cunning it becomes, as if it's learning how to lure people in. They also say a kikimora haunts our swamp, and if you fall in at night, there's a good chance she'll come and finish you off herself. I didn't believe in that, of course, but I knew one thing. If you walk the marshes, don't trust your eyes. They will deceive you. If you see a clearing, don't step on it. You'll likely sink. If you hear someone calling, don't go. You'll drown. Our swamp was constantly growing, too. If there was solid ground in a spot 2 years ago, now there was only muck. So, in a way, We weren't even surprised by Alex's death. It had happened before, and usually the swamp kept what it took. It rarely gave the bodies back. But they say those who drowned long ago walk the swamp at night, right in its center. Where the center was, I didn't know. It was too massive. And who in their right mind would trek into a place like that? It's unsafe enough on the edge. If you go deeper, you're never coming back. The 6 of us examined the spot where Alex sank, and naturally, we didn't find a body. We had a grim conversation. Max, you were with him. You have to be the one to tell his wife. I can't. It has to be someone. Someone has to tell her, and that someone is you. How was I supposed to say it? Just tell the truth. It was heartbreaking to watch the widow. She sobbed for 2 days, wandering the village in tears. Then she vanished too. Whether she drowned herself or hanged herself somewhere in the woods, nobody knows. Like her husband, who never saw her body. All sorts of rumors started flying. Some said she couldn't bear the grief and left to start a new life. But who in the right mind listens to gossip? Perhaps it was boarded up their own taps, so no one would be poking. Days turned into weeks, and everything seemed fine. Alex's case began to fade, and so did his wife's. If Alex's fate was somewhat clear, there was no sense in talking about the wife, since she never reappeared. But one morning, strange rumors crawled through the village. The local drunkard was going around convincing everyone that he had personally seen Alex, his wife, and everyone else who had ever vanished in that swamp at the edge of the marshes, in the moonlight. He said they were calling him to join them, but naturally he had refused. Some laughed, some were terrified, and others just listened with interest. I was no exception. I didn't believe him at first, but out of idle curiosity, I asked him to show me exactly where he had seen the dead. When we arrived, I didn't expect to see anything. But damn it, the spot he showed me was completely trampled. You know how it looks when a large crowd stomps around on a small patch of land? It was exactly like that. And beyond the trampled grass, near the edge of the swamp, the entire ground was covered in some kind of pitch-black sludge that wouldn't dry. "What is this?" I asked the drunkard. "I don't know, but it looks like..." The black filth didn't look like anything else. It was darker than coal. The drunkard walked over to it and reached out to touch it. "Stop," I said. "Why?" "I don't know. Just don't touch it. Who knows what it is?" "Come on, it's just swamp mud. I don't think it's dangerous." I stayed silent, watching as he took that viscous, foul-smelling slime and smeared it over his hand. "Well?" I asked. "Well," he replied, "it's black, stinking silt. I haven't seen anything like it before, but that's not what interests me." "And what does?" "Were you saying what I saw yesterday is true? Someone dragged this mud out here, and judging by the tracks, it came right out of the swamp, like something filthy crawled out." I felt uneasy. Truly, who in their right mind would haul mud out of a swamp onto the shore? But I just replied, "You need to drink less. The river's going to bloom." He grunted something incoherent, and we headed back to the village. I spent the whole day deep in thought. Was I imagining it? Did he really see them? No, you'd have to be a complete idiot to believe a man who sees little people more often than real ones. But on the other hand, if you ignore his words, who could have been trampling the ground all night? There were so many footprints. And whose idea was it to haul out that mud? Speaking of the mud, I didn't like it.
It was strange. And that idiot even touched it with his bare hands. Oh well, it's his problem. I need to be more careful if I have to walk past the swamp. Gossip is one thing, but something is definitely happening out there.
The next day, toward noon, my neighbor told me that the very same drunkard had drowned in the swamp. And he didn't just do it normally. Toward evening, he had grabbed a man and said, "Let's go to the edge of the marsh. Let's see what's there." "What's there?" the man asked. "Someone is calling." Maybe he thought it was an emergency, someone drowning. So he pushed the drunkard toward the swamp. They went into the thicket, a place where it's scary to go even in broad daylight. Now it was evening, and getting out in the dark seemed impossible. But someone was calling, and the man thought he had to help. Suddenly, the drunkard stopped abruptly and said, "Here." "What's here?" "Well, someone's calling." The man listened. There was dead silence in the swamp. He told the drunkard to stop drinking, but he didn't get the chance. "I'm going to take a look. Wait here." And he dove into the swamp. "He walked into the mud?" I asked. "What mud?" the neighbor asked. "Well, remember, he was talking about seeing the dead?" "Yeah, I remember." "Well, let's just say there were strange things going on. And there was this strange mud, the stuff he was touching." "Deals with the devil," was all the neighbor replied. We talked for a while longer, and then went about our business. Koko Cherty, Nanach Gliadia Priniesli, I thought, getting out of bed and walking to the door. "Who is it? Big Andrew?" "Open up, it's me." "Alex? Alex? The one who vanished in the swamp?" "I didn't vanish anywhere. Open up, I'll tell you how it really went down." I turned on the outdoor light and cracked the door open. There were two of them, the drunkard and Alex. They looked terrible. Раздутые, посиневшие тела, все в тени этой самой грязи, пытаются улыбаться. "Well, are you going to let us in?" Alex said. And as he spoke, foul-smelling liquid poured from his mouth. "No, I won't let you in," I said, my legs shaking uncontrollably. "But why? We're friends. Come on, let's sit, have a drink, talk. I brought a bottle." He showed me a bottle, filled with that same black sludge. "No, I'm not drinking, and I'm not letting you in." "Come on, what's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? If you don't want to let us in, then come with us to the swamp. We'll celebrate everything there. My wife, Michelle, who vanished 6 years ago. Well, anyway, why am I telling you all this? Let's go sit, talk." "No, I can't. I have to be up early tomorrow." As I said it, I prayed my voice wouldn't crack and give away my terror. "Well, can I come closer to you?" "Why? And why do you keep asking for permission?" I asked, perfectly well aware of why he was doing it. "Well, so, can I?" he repeated. "No," I said, and slammed the door shut. I sat right on the floor, one thought spinning in my head. Evil spirits cannot enter unless you invite them or give them permission. I don't remember the exact rules, but apparently these ones couldn't enter. If that was true, then everything would be fine, as long as I didn't give them that permission. That night felt endless. I didn't sleep. I packed my things. I prepared to leave. In the morning, when I opened the door, I saw that the entire porch was covered in that same mud. And no, thought I, mud cannot be touched. If you touch it, the swamp will call for you one day.
Walking through the village, I saw doors, windows, and gates standing wide open. As I later found out, many people had agreed to go with them that night, or had invited them into their homes, where they were forced to drink that foul liquid. And, as far as I know, only 15 people from the entire village survived that night.
It isn't just about the thrill. No. It's a way to prove you're actually alive, instead of just existing by inertia. When you wander to where the map ends, and common sense starts whispering, "Turn back," you suddenly realize that this very moment, when your heart is pounding against your ribs and the air feels too thick to breathe, is what life truly is. No one will understand why you keep seeking trouble, why you take risks and push into wild, untamed places where no one is waiting for you. They'll call you mad, because to them, peace is the goal, while to you, it's a slow fading away. I stay silent about it, because words only ruin the feeling. This adventure is like fuel. The more you burn in the moment, the clearer you see a world that others will never have the guts to explore. So, here's the deal, Michael said, poking the map with his pencil. Nick and Leoka stood to his left and right. We came from here to here, right? Right, Nick confirmed. And here is the plan for today, Michael continued. We are here now. He poked the exact spot on the map where they stood. We'll head here. Michael traced a dotted line. All told, it's about 20 kilometers. Then tomorrow, we'll move from the high ground we hit today down to here. He pointed to another spot. Where is that? Leoka asked. An abandoned village. No one has lived there for 20 years, maybe longer. Why the hell do we need to go through there? Nick grumbled. Isn't it easier to just go from here, like this? Nick suggested an alternative path. No, Michael took back the pencil. Definitely not. I didn't include the village in our route just for the fun of it. There's a reason. To refill water? Leoka asked. Exactly, Michael nodded. We're running dangerously low, and I'm hoping to top off our supply there. Plus, I'm holding on to a faint hope that there might be something left standing to sleep in. What's wrong with the forest? Can't you sleep? Nick asked. It's not that I can't sleep, but honestly, I'm getting tired of this trek. I'd love to sleep under a roof, preferably in a soft bed. Fine, have it your way, Nick said, pulling up a blade of grass, losing all interest in the map. Well, Michael asked, any questions, suggestions, or requests? What requests could we have? Leoka said, also bored with the map. I'd kill for some decent food, but there isn't any, and there won't be. All right, let's go, Michael said, rolling up the map and tucking it into his pocket. The sooner we reach the end, the sooner we jump in the car and head home. What's wrong with the food? Nick asked Leoka, who was trailing behind Michael at the back of the line. Well, just, the other started. I didn't think canned food would get old so fast. I thought I'd be fine for these 5 days, but I was wrong. I don't know, Nick said. You're weird. I actually like canned food. Not all of it, sure, but I could eat tushonka forever. Actually, canned food isn't exactly healthy, Michael interjected. Why's that? Nick was indignant. Because it's loaded with enough salt to fill a sack. That's why. I finished a tin last night, and I was chugging water by the bucket all evening. And we don't have that much left. We might have to hike from the village to the car without a drop. You think there won't be wells there? Leoka asked. Wells will be there, sure, but I don't know if there will be water in them, or what the quality will be. And you have none at all? 3 liters, Michael replied. Strictly for today. That's it. This is all because of Nick, Alioka said. How is this my fault? Nick was surprised. How? I told you back at the car, take more water and we'll be fine. And you said, no, I won't. Why carry that much? Well, look at us now. He's got 3 liters, I've got a couple, and that's it. Why are you telling me this? Nick mumbled. If you want it, you carry it. Don't go bossing me around with your take more water orders. I'm not a camel. Oh, fine, I was just joking. Well, I'm not. You have this weird habit of blaming others, and that's a very bad habit. One day someone won't realize you're joking, and then you'll experience the power of the dark side. Michael burst out laughing when he heard that. All right, enough bickering, Michael said. We came here to relax, breathe fresh air, and sleep in the silence by the campfire. Yeah, silence.
You have no idea how those cursed hedgehogs scared me all night. They stomp in the bushes like they're unloading sacks of grain. And before dawn, I heard an owl or something. I almost climbed a tree, Nick said. It was dead quiet, and then, hoo-woo, right over my head. By the way, how far do we have to go today? I forgot. 20 kilometers, Michael replied. How much did we cover yesterday? 12. Maybe we push hard today and go further? The forest is clear. Not even those cursed raspberry bushes. No, better not push it, Michael answered. We have to climb a bit of elevation today. It's not tall, but it's still an uphill hike. Some mountain, just a rise, a small hill. And honestly, there's no point in pushing it anyway. Just to have less to hike later, Nick mumbled. What less? Michael replied. What difference does it make 10 kilometers or 11 when you've already hiked nearly 20? Well, actually, Leoka interrupted, there is a difference. Even an extra step in a situation like this is a lot. I don't know, Michael answered. And the group of 3 continued their journey in silence. Well, Tokacia, you've been hopping back and forth all day, expecting guests? Barsik the cat was quite large, and in terms of temperament, this fluffy, fat creature was probably closer to a dog than a cat. The cat jumped anxiously from the windowsill to the floor and let out a nasty hiss. I know, Grandma Nina replied to the cat. I've been waiting for a long time myself. Living people don't usually wander into these parts. Maybe some malevolent spirit slips by, but that's rare. Well, Bars, shall we prepare for our visitors? The cat nearly jumped with delight that his mistress, like him, wouldn't mind feasting on fresh meat. He expressed his opinion with a simple, satisfied meow. Well then, we must prepare. They'll be here in a day. I know they're on the road now. Tomorrow, by about 8 in the evening. No, 7. The old woman scratched a wart on her chin. They'll be here. But in a village like this, and in such a state, we can't exactly greet them like this, can we, Barsik? He meowed. Correct. So, I must cast a glamour over the village, so my dear guests don't run off in a panic. Sighing heavily and limping, the old woman and Barsik opened the door and stepped onto the porch. They looked at the surroundings. Ruins, tall weeds, and on the opposite hill, the silhouettes of lone crosses. There was a time, wasn't there, Kitty? The cat nudged her leg with its forehead. I think so too. You were a normal cat. 8 mice. People were all around. And now, where are they? The
cat looked at her intently. There they are. She pointed to the hill, all lying there. We took care of the last one. How long ago was that? 17 years, maybe. Never mind. Let's think about good things, right? Tomorrow the boys will arrive, and we'll go and shed some years. I don't know about you, but I feel... She cracked her back and stood up straight. Right. Where shall we start? The yards and houses? What do you think? Is that the right decision? The cat didn't react. Of course, she agreed with herself. It's correct. Who would want to sleep in a village that looks like an overgrown graveyard? No one. So, we must spruce up the houses, mow the grass, and most importantly...
She raised a finger with a long, sharp nail. Most importantly, create the illusion of life. Tonight, my helpers will put everything in order so it feels fresh and lively. We'll hide the crosses on the hill with fog so they aren't so visible. Cat is cleaning the right word. He purred. The predator. We won't do the work ourselves. I am, after all, a lady, no? Taking the fat, important predator into her arms, she went into the crooked hut, which was shrouded in twilight, its space cluttered with bones and pottery shards. Bundles of herbs and berries hung from the ceiling, things the witch had collected and stored for decades. On the stove stood a large old cauldron that she intended to use right now. Placing the cat on the floor, she tapped her foot on the wooden floorboards.
Hey, you lot! Helpers!
Strange, terrifying sounds erupted from the cellar.
Get out here! There's work to do!
Two wretched imps jumped out from the darkness.
Helpers, the witch said with contempt. We're working now. I've prepared plenty for you, so get ready. The imps leaped into the air and began performing tricks. You, she pointed to the right one. As soon as it starts to rain, go restore the houses. Be quick about it. They need to look lived in. Clear? The imp grunted nastily. And you, she poked the second one, mow the grass everywhere. Create footpaths so it seems like people walk here. Then return and restore our house and the Bap house. You have 1 day for all of it. The imps grumbled unhappily. They had reasons. First, it was currently daytime. Even if the witch hid the sky with clouds, they couldn't walk comfortably. They lacked their full strength during the day. Secondly, restoring a whole village was heavy work, even for them, though they loved the work and their energy was overflowing. What's with the grumbling? Do this work and I'll give you more. The imps grumbled even louder, pointing at the window. I know, the witch said. I'll clear the sky and then you'll go. The witch closed her eyes and began whispering strange words. Done. Wait 10 minutes, then go, she said.
The weather outside didn't react at all to what happened in the hut. But then, as if by command, clouds began to form in the perfectly clear sky, specifically over this village, turning into storm clouds. A human seeing this would say it was impossible, unable to explain such a phenomenon. But the witch, who had hidden the village from the sun and brought the rain, knew there was no one around except those 3 boys. She had lived here for many years and knew this forest like her own home. Once, she had been a person like any other, working in the fields and gardens, having plans for her life. But one day, through her own carelessness, she accepted a gift from a witch
and her life changed in the most terrifying way. She had been taught by other witches at the Sabbaths, and ever since, she had become what she was. Each time death came for her, she gave someone else in her place, delaying the inevitable. But over time, the village ran out of people, and the witch faced a choice: stay or move. She liked this place. It was quiet. She didn't have to worry about a careless traveler stumbling in. She knew no one would disturb her magic. She knew everything happening around her. Her eyes and ears were everywhere. She understood how life flowed in the forest and knew when someone intruded. But every year, there were fewer people. Each time, she had to travel great distances with her imps to find someone to sacrifice in her stead. Now, a gift of 3 people was walking intentionally toward her, and she wasn't going to let them go. She had to prepare so nothing would raise suspicion. After the repairs, she would force the imps to take the form of people to play their parts. The people coming from the forest would meet one of them on the road and ask where they could stay. The imps might not be geniuses, but they were cunning. The main thing was to teach them what to say. The witch lit the stove and poured water into the cauldron. She had quite a job ahead, brewing potions to help carry out her business. The imps had left a minute ago when the rain started, and now she heard trees falling and logs being dragged here and there.
3 people. Just think, the witch mused, cutting a couple of leaves with her sickle and throwing them into the pot. I'll kill one in the bathhouse. They'll arrive and be surprised there's life here. I'll politely answer their questions and suggest one of them go help with firewood for the bathhouse. My imps will be waiting there. I'll crack his head open with an axe and take his heart. I'll use it to maintain Barsik's appearance. I'll make the imps chop the rest into pieces to make cutlets. Must feed the others something. She tossed a pair of butterfly wings into the pot. We'll fry the cutlets, juicy, tasty, with a nice crust from their comrade. The witch giggled hysterically. Sweet, sweet meat. Need to season it with garlic. To keep them from suspecting, I'll force an imp to take the shape of the murdered man and say he has a toothache. Yes, that will be perfect. They'll eat cutlets made of their friend. She was overcome with another fit of laughter. The second and third ones, I'll finish off the old-fashioned way. Why am I standing here brewing? She grew angry at herself. It's not in vain. You can't put potions in cutlets, only in water. A shame, but what can you do? I'll offer them water at the end, ice cold and refreshing. If all 3 drink it, it'll be beautiful, and I won't have to share the cutlets. The potion in the cauldron began to sing, and the witch added a couple more leaves. One for youth, one to pay off death, and the third for resolve. She couldn't refuse such a gift of fate.
How much further? Nick asked, walking behind Michael. Not much. Any minute now, we should be out. Maybe we just drop here? Loka suggested. No, guys, we have to keep going. Just a little more. And tomorrow by noon, we'll be home. I wish we were there already, Loka called out. I'm pretty beat today. But we covered a lot of ground, Michael replied. And I still said we should push harder. This is shaky, Nick said. Michael laughed. So push. What's another couple of kilometers? You're strong as an ox. Whatever. Nick brushed him off. Michael, you better keep an eye on the road, lest we've lost our way and are headed in the wrong direction. No, wait, it's nothing left. We'll be out in 10 minutes. But 10 minutes weren't needed. The three travelers emerged from the forest and saw a marvelous sight. An evening village before them. Light burned in a few huts. A couple of people were visible on the street. And to the left, in the distance, sat a thick, milky fog. Michael, Nick said loudly, you said the village was abandoned. What the hell are people doing here? Michael pulled the map from his inner pocket, unfolded it, and stared at it, as if the answer would appear there. Well, truthfully, there shouldn't be anyone here, Michael continued, sounding unsure. Well, as you can see, there are people, Nick retorted. All right, guys, don't panic, Loka said, draping his arms over both their shoulders. Personally, I'm glad there are people, and I'm glad Michael made a mistake. Do you understand what you're talking about? People. It's just wonderful. Loka rolled his eyes. People will give us tasty food, we can wash in a bathhouse, and sleep. Not like animals in the forest, but on a wooden floor at least. So, boys, I see absolutely no reason to panic. You can stand here as long as you want, but I'm going to eat some potatoes and onions. Nick shrugged off the arms and headed toward the nearest hut, where an old man sat on a bench by the fence. We just wanted to sort it out, Nick called after him. It's fine here, Leoka threw over his shoulder, walking on, content. Michael took out his smartphone and checked for a signal, or rather, the lack of one. Fine, to hell with it. I made a mistake, so what? Why panic? Apparently, I was given wrong information, Michael said, and followed Leoka. Nick didn't want to stand out, so he gave up and followed. After all, Michael was leading them, and without him, they'd never get out of this forest. Catching up to Leoka, Nick asked, "Are you gonna wait for us? You guys are so stuck in your heads. You found a problem where there is none," Leoka said, walking toward the old man, who was as overgrown and ancient as a forest spirit. "Greetings, father," Leoka said. "Greetings, sons," the old man replied, and shook their hands firmly. "Who might you be? And what are you doing here?" "Well, we're like this," Michael said. "We came here, thought there was no one, and here you are." "Great. Nothing," the old man laughed. "They wrote us off 20 years ago. No electricity, no water, less than 50 residents. And look for yourself. We live in the middle of the forest. No post office, nothing. We walk toward the road and catch rides to the city. Look yourself. There's no road. And they don't allow us to log the forest to build even a dirt track. Not allowed, they say. So we live like outcasts." "I see," Michael said. "But what we wanted was, could we get some home-cooked food and sleep at least in a yard?" "That? Sure. You boys need to see Linka. For me, she's Linka. For you, Grandma Nina. She'll take you in. Probably." "And what about you?" Nick asked. "I live alone. Don't cook. And honestly, I don't want to." "We'll pay," Michael said. "And we know how to cook ourselves. You just show us where things are. And don't worry, we're honest men." "No, boys, I can't. You go to Linka. That hut there, the one with smoke rising, she'll take you." "Fine. Thanks for at least that," Leoka said, and marched toward the hut he was pointed to. "All right, Father, don't get sick,"
Nick said, and followed Michael and Loka. Walking down the road, Nick asked Michael, "Doesn't it seem strange that the old man didn't take us in?" "How tired I am of your paranoia," Michael replied. "No, think about it." "What is there to think about? He doesn't want to, so he doesn't. Don Diego?" "But the money. You have it all anyway." "Nick, if there are problems, just because you offer money doesn't mean anything. You're just making an offer. This isn't a store. If they say no, you don't insist. We're guests here, so act a bit more modest." Nick wanted to answer, but decided to stay silent. They approached a fence painted green, behind which hid numerous flowers and garden beds. "Nice," Loka said. "Don't tell me," Michael replied. They opened the gate and walked into the yard, seeing a pretty old woman with a cat on her lap, knitting something with needles. "Hello?" Loka tried to sound as friendly as possible. "Hello there," the old woman answered with a sly squint. "Who are you boys here to see? Whose kin are you?" "Well, we're like this." Loka scratched the back of his head. "We were just walking around and came to you." Loka spread his arms wide, as if to say, "What else is there to say?" "Tourists," Michael answered. "Hiking currently. We thought the village was empty and wanted to stay the night and top off our water. But then we found you living here." "You boys, don't you worry. I won't chase you away. You can stay the night, but I will cost you a pretty penny." "Not a problem," Michael said. "Don't judge me, boys. You go on hikes, and I need the money. You see for yourselves where I live and how I live." "Well, yes, the middle of nowhere," Michael confirmed. "Exactly," the old woman agreed. "Oh, why are we standing here, boys? Let's go into the house." The old woman rose, leaving her needles and yarn on the bench, and walked quite briskly toward the hut. She climbed the porch, opened the door, and said, "Come on in, boys." The boys didn't stand stay and accepted the invitation.
Inside, everything was as it should be. A large wooden table with a samovar on a tablecloth. A kerosene lamp stood by the window, and another on the table, casting a cozy twilight. The far left corner was occupied by a well-heated stove, whose heat and glowing embers illuminated that side of the room. "Why are you standing? Sit at the table. I'll organize everything in a jiffy." The old woman seemed excited and didn't know which task to tackle first. "It's nice in the hut," Michael said, sitting on the bench. "And don't tell me, I thought it would be a mess, but here it's like a museum, perfectly orderly," Leoka said. "But what does she do here all day?" Nick said. "Knits, cleans. The stove surprised me more." "Yeah," Michael and Leoka murmured, looking at the stove that lit their faces with a red glow. The old woman entered and said, "Sons, would you help me with wood for the bathhouse?" "Bathhouse?" Leoka almost dissolved into a smile. "Of course we'll help," Michael said. "Anyone want to go, or should I?" "I'll go," Leoka said. "I haven't been in a bathhouse in 2 years. I'll get everything organized there." All right, Nick said. Leoka stood up and headed for the exit, while Grandma called out from the doorway, "Boys, as soon as he's done helping, I'll fry some cutlets in the stove." "Cutlets? That's a good theme," Leoka said to the door. "He pointed you toward the rack. I'll give you a couple of tins of Tashanka. You like that, don't you? Now get out of here. Go chop your wood." Nick dismissed him. The door closed, leaving the travelers alone. "Son, what's your name, by the way?" "I'm Leoka."
In short, Leoka, here's the thing. We need to chop some wood. There's not enough there. The old woman and the guy went behind the house toward the bathhouse, near which stood an empty woodshed. I don't chop much myself, the old woman continued, and here you guys have visited. Don't you worry about it, Leoka said. Chopping isn't hard for me. That's good, the old woman said. Now, wait here. They stopped before the open door of the bathhouse, and the old woman went to fetch an axe. Literally 2 minutes passed before the old woman returned holding an axe, and, walking up to Leoka, said, "Right, now watch what we do. The wood itself lies in the bathhouse, so go in, take it, and start chopping." Leoka entered, and, in the twilight, found no wood. He was about to turn around to ask what exactly to chop, when something heavy struck him on the head, and he fell.
Right. This heart for me, this for meat, and you take his form. The imps, prepared for all of this, quickly performed the deed. One did it, and the second, taking his form, pulled on his clothes. Now you're Leoka. Understand? The imp nodded. Good. Speak less, the old woman continued, while the second imp continued to gut Leoka, spilling his entrails. Do you remember what to say? Yes, the imp answered. Repeat it. If they ask why I'm so uncommunicative, say I have a toothache. Good, said the old woman. Listen, the old lady has been gone for a long time, Nick said, sprawled on the table. She'll be back soon, probably, Michael said. No, it's been a while, Nick argued. I'm starving. Nothing to do. Wait, we'll grab those cutlets soon, and it'll be fine. The entrance door opened, and Leoka and the old woman entered. The old woman held a baking sheet with minced meat, and Leoka held his jaw. What's wrong with you? Michael asked. Toothache, he replied. That's all we needed, Nick said, watching as the old woman walked toward the stove and began shaping cutlets from the meat. What about the bathhouse? Nick asked. Everything's fine, Leoka replied. Chopped the wood, started the fire. Now we eat, and it'll be nice and warm. I see, Michael sighed. Why did it take so long? Nick asked him. Well, finding the axe, chopping, showing and explaining everything. That's not a quick business, you know. Meanwhile, the old woman sent the baking sheet with the cutlets into the stove. Wiping her hands on her apron, she said, Sons, I would have set you up, but there's nothing but meat. The potatoes haven't come up yet, so I can offer you water or tea. Yes, by the way, Michael, Roma nudged him. We need water. Did you forget? No, of course not, but I thought we'd fill up when we left. Let's fill up now. No need to stagger around in the morning. Faster we leave, faster we arrive. There's a bucket in the corner, the old woman said. The water is clean, from the well. The dipper is there. Pour it. Good, Michael said, and stared at Leoka. And you, don't you need water? Leave him be, Nick said. I'll fill up later. He has a toothache.
Leoka nodded as if to say, Yes, I'll fill up later. Filling the necessary amount, Michael drank the water straight from the dipper with great pleasure. The water was cool and pleasant, exactly what he needed after a hard day. Good water, Michael exhaled after drinking. It's from the well, the old woman said. Drink up, sons. The cutlets will be ready in 10 minutes. May seem to fry pretty fast, Nick said. Look at the stove. The heat in it, weak. Even on a campfire, you wouldn't cook that fast. Here, you put it in, and that's it. And most importantly, The stove holds heat for a long time. Light it in the morning, and it'll stay hot until evening." "I see," Nick answered, surprised. "I just never cooked in a stove like that and thought it took much more time. Meat, after all." "No," the old woman replied. "So go on, top up your supplies and sit down." Something was wrong. Nick couldn't understand what exactly, but he didn't like what was happening. There was something intangible that just didn't add up. He couldn't yet explain what exactly he didn't like, but he decided that he wouldn't eat or drink anything this old lady offered. He didn't share his doubts with Michael and Leoka. He wouldn't convince them of anything anyway. And Nick didn't understand Leoka at all. What was wrong with him? Before, he talked like a radio. You couldn't make him shut up. Here, in just half an hour, he developed a toothache and sat strangely, constantly twitching or scratching himself. In a word, something was wrong.
"Well, you gonna pour or what?" Michael nudged Roma. "No," he answered. "I'll do it later. With Leoka. In the morning." "Oh, good," Michael replied, and stretched heavily, sleepily. The cold, clean water he drank hit him hard, and the atmosphere of twilight, with the reddish glow of embers and the smell of cutlets with garlic, lulled him. They sat back down, and amid casual chatter, waited for the tasty, sizzling cutlets to be placed on the table before them. "Well, eat, boys," the old woman said, and took a cutlet herself. Leoka and Michael didn't need to be asked twice. They immediately crunched into them, especially Leoka. He didn't eat the cutlets. He devoured them like an animal. The cutlets were hot, but he clearly didn't care. Despite the bad tooth and the temperature, he bit off half the meat, chewed, and swallowed. "Leoka?" Nick asked. "Are you okay?" "Toothache," the other replied. "Well, that explains a lot," Nick replied. The evening was passing in a very strange way. Leoka seemed not like himself. Michael was constantly yawning, saying he wouldn't go to the bathhouse and would wash tomorrow. Leoka was whining that he needed to sleep. Nick, being an observant person, decided to pretend that he too was deathly tired, and only a soft pillow could save him. The old woman offered them several places to sleep. In the bathhouse, where it was already warm, here in the kitchen, or in the yard. Nick chose the yard, though Leoka insisted they sleep in the house. But Nick was adamant, and Michael was already asleep on his feet, so arguing with him wasn't smart.
For some reason, the old woman decided to show Nick first where exactly he should sleep. She took him by the hand and pointed her finger at the place where he should lay out his sleeping bag, claiming there were many ants there, and exactly in this spot there were none. The excuse was complete nonsense, but Nick wasn't planning to lay out his sleeping bag. He was planning to flee as soon as the old woman went into the house. Thankfully, copies of the maps were with all three. "Lay it here," the old woman told Nick, and stood there, watching. "Good," Nick answered, and did nothing. "Yes, this will be just right," the old woman continued, looking upward, while the night twilight crept in slowly. "Agreed," Nick repeated, lazily unbuckling his backpack, realizing the old woman wouldn't leave until she saw him starting to settle in. She would likely keep a close eye on him after putting everyone else to bed. But why, Nick thought, unzipping the sleeping bag and starting to throw out various trinkets.
Nick began to act active so the old woman would leave and he could hop over the fence and escape quietly. He didn't care what his friends, with whom he was hiking for the last time, would think of him. Better they think I'm paranoid, Nick thought, looking at the back of the old woman as she headed to the hut. Only when the old woman closed the door did Nick quickly roll everything back up, slung his backpack, and, walking quickly to the fence, jumped over. In the light of the twilight and the chirping of crickets, he headed toward the forest.
Entering the street and moving away from the house, he ran. He was terrified by certain moments. First, walking down the street, he glanced into a couple of yards. They were identical, or rather, empty. No barrels, garden hoses, or trees. Just empty territory and a lamp in the window. The second yard, which Nick looked into, was a copy of the first. All the grass mown, no objects, a standard plot without anything, and a lamp in the window. Something was wrong, and it was frightening. Briefly, it was even worse because Nick didn't know what exactly frightened him. There was something incorrect in this place, something that couldn't be. But because of his fatigue, he couldn't realize what exactly the problem was. But he knew and was 100% convinced that he wasn't fleeing, but saving himself. He couldn't convince the others. Entering the house, the old woman showed where exactly Leoha would sleep and where Michael would. She specifically put them in one room on the floor so the imp, who was currently playing Leoha very poorly, could help her deal with him. But as soon as Michael reached the room, he fell like a cut tree and fell asleep right on the floor. The imp in Leoha's form stood and looked at the witch with a dual expression. "What are you looking at?" "Well, I thought we would need to." "As you can see, we don't," the witch replied. "You haven't seen this, what's his name, Nick?" "No, haven't seen him," the imp replied. "And he didn't eat the cutlet?" "No." "That's bad," the witch replied. "Fine. He seemed to want to sleep, and I don't think he suspected anything. Let's deal with this one for now, and then I'll take a pitchfork and deal with this Nick myself." "Good," the imp said, and in 3 movements dressed the naked body. While they fussed with Michael, while they did everything and rested a little, they remembered they still needed to deal with Nick. The witch took a pitchfork and, calling the imp, went into the yard where he was supposed to be sleeping. But approaching closer, she saw that Nick had already fled. The witch found it funny. The forest was her territory, and you couldn't escape her. She could ask the Leshy to find Nick, and he would do it, sending all the creatures after him. Or she could call on dark forces. That would be many times faster and more effective. It was pointless to send the imps in pursuit. They wouldn't have made it. And so the witch, closing her eyes, mentally asked for help from whoever lived in the forest. Nick didn't just know, he felt that something was happening, and that something was not in his favor. The night had finally fallen, and walking through the forest became eerie. The full moon hanging in the night sky cast creepy shadows from the trees, and the darkness became only thicker. Nick knew he would be searched for, but he didn't know who or how, and so he couldn't take any specific preemptive actions. But standing like a post on the edge of the forest was also a questionable idea. The entire forest and the hill to the left were, at that moment, representing complete silence. No rustle of a branch, no sounds of nature. It was lying in wait for someone, and Nick understood it was clearly not waiting for him. After wandering for 20 minutes from side to side and mentally asking for help from everyone he could, a slight ray of hope flashed in Nick's mind. In the moonlight,
he saw a wall of fog that had been hanging there all evening. Understanding Destiny's hint, he rushed there.
The fog was strange, as if alive, Nick thought, reaching out a hand. It was like a wall, sitting in clearly defined boundaries and not daring to go further. Nick, accepting the offer, decided to hide in it. The fog was dense, very dense, like cotton wool. The ringing silence clogged his ears. Sometimes it seemed to him that he heard someone large and massive, someone who breathed heavily and ran from side to side, breaking fences. Or maybe it only seemed so. After all, it was so easy to get lost in this fog, lose not only someone from view, but lose oneself. Nick woke up early the next morning. He didn't remember falling asleep. He seemed to have been walking or running, he remembered vaguely. He remembered that someone was looking for him in the fog and even seemed to be calling. And someone heavy was running from side to side, and he was hiding from him. After sitting for a minute, Nick, paying no attention to anything, walked on in the necessary direction, leaving what had happened to him behind. The witch, however, was furious, and mostly at herself. The fog, the cursed fog for which she had brewed her potion all day, had played against her. She had specifically made it so dense that it was impossible to find or see anything. And this tourist, as if he knew, as if he felt it, had gone exactly there when they were looking for him. The whole forest, every bush that night, told the witch that Nick was in the fog, and she had no choice but to send the pursuit there, although she knew her helpers wouldn't find anyone. The fog of Oblivion calms everyone who enters it, and people stop paying attention to anything, becoming scattered and inattentive. And even if something horrific happened right in front of them, they would walk past calmly. The witch was angry at herself for this, for letting the third one slip away. Mourning for some time over this, and eating a couple of cutlets, she decided, well, whatever. He escaped. Two were more than enough for her.
We live in our own cozy little world, firmly believing in the laws of physics and logic. But you only need to crack the door open just a little, and it all crumbles into dust. It leaves you alone with something that has no place in any human textbook. Try telling someone about it. The moment you start to speak, pity flashes in their eyes. They think you're overworked, or perhaps your imagination has simply run wild. So, you fall silent, because you understand it's easier to be branded a madman than to try and prove that the darkness knows how to stare back at you. That secret now lives inside me like a splinter. It reminds me every time the lights go out that the world is not at all what it seems at first glance, and that some doors are better left unopened. It was past 10 o'clock. I had finished dinner and bolted straight for my bed. The reason for such uncharacteristic haste? My grandfather wasn't telling me just any old folk tales tonight, the kind he'd heard from others or experienced himself. He rarely shared the really dark ones. He always said I was too young for such things. Usually, he'd just sit in the chair by my bed and tell me light-hearted, funny stories from his life. But all week, I had been methodically pestering him, and he had finally given in, promising that tonight he would tell me a few truly terrifying stories. I lay there with the blanket pulled over my head. A lamp was burning by the bed, its switch hanging right within reach. Grandfather was taking his time getting to my room. The lights in the living room and hallway had clicked off, but I heard no footsteps.
I lay there, staring intently into the darkness of the open doorway, which was only barely pierced by the yellow glow of the lamp. The house was silent. I waited for him, eyes locked on that door. The door to my room began to open slowly and soundlessly. I lay on the bed, eyes wide, staring, but I saw no one. Suddenly, Grandfather lunged out of the darkness with his arms spread wide.
"Not scary at all," I said, truly. Grandfather looked at me doubtfully, smoothing out his white, fluffy beard. "Honestly," I lied, "I knew it was you. You stomp like an elephant." "It was a simple test," Grandfather said, settling into the chair by the bed. "I figured if you shrieked, I wouldn't tell you the stories. But if you didn't, I would." "Go on, tell me," I said, getting comfortable. "I'll tell you, but on one condition." "And what's that?" "You must never tell these stories to anyone, not even your grandmother. Otherwise, she'll scold us both." "I won't," I promised. And Grandfather began his tale. It was winter, somewhere in the middle of February. My Uncle Misha, who has since passed, and I were driving back from the village. It's far, maybe 40 kilometers, or perhaps more. There are 2 ways to get there. The first, and safest, is the well-trodden path that everyone uses. Even in the middle of the night, you'd likely run into someone there. But there was a second way, one we didn't like to take. 5 kilometers through a small patch of forest, followed by 15 kilometers across an open field. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were leaving the gathering, and everyone was trying to persuade us. "Where are you going? It's night, and the frost is bitter." But outside, there truly was no wind. The stars were visible, the moon was shining, and the snow sparkled in the moonlight like silver dust. We insisted. "Nope, we're going." We got ready and walked to the sled. All in all, as we said our goodbyes, they gave us provisions and some spirits for the road, so we wouldn't be bored. I climbed into the sled, buried myself in the hay, pulled up the collar of my sheepskin coat, and we headed home. We were in high spirits, yelling songs, shouting at the dogs chasing us. I remember thinking, it's good the night is so bright. You can see everything as clear as day. But as we left the village and approached the forest, I began to feel uneasy. While the village looked like something from a fairy tale, the houses like straight pillars, their roofs shimmering with silver, the forest looked grim. It stood before us like a black wall, nothing like a fairy tale at all. And all those rumors about this road wouldn't leave me in peace. But I kept thinking, it would be fine. The ugly shadows of bare branches created bizarre patterns on the ground in the moonlight. If you stared long enough, it looked like someone was standing by that spruce tree. Or that one shadow was a strange monster, stretching its clawed paws from the forest onto the road. Naturally, we stopped singing. The frost didn't feel as sharp anymore. I even started speaking to Misha in a lower voice, because the silence was terrifying. The tales of people disappearing on this road. The stories of laughing corpses and living horses with broken legs thrashing in the woods nearby. All of that, coupled with the silence, simply crushed us. As if to confirm my fears, Misha kept urging the horse on, not letting it slow down. I felt relieved when we reached the open field. I slapped Misha on the shoulder and said, "Well, we made it." But he said, so quietly, "Don't celebrate yet, Stepan. We still have the field to cross." "What's wrong with the field?" I asked, just as softly. "I heard news that about a week ago, they found 4 corpses in this very field. And the most important thing, heaven knows where they came from. They were walking from Vyatka itself. That's 30 kilometers away." "Exactly," I said.
and no one has any idea why they were trudging out here. Their relatives say they had no business or family in these parts. Not even acquaintances. They say all four had some kind of problems, whether with their heads or something else. They say they all dreamed of a man with huge eyes calling them here, to this field. And do you really believe that? Believe it or not, what does it matter? The four bodies are there. And as you can see, they came from God knows where. Well then, speed up the horse, I said, burying myself deeper into my collar.
I at first thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A black dot, at the very edge of visibility, appeared in the open field, almost out of nowhere. Or maybe I just hadn't noticed it. I started watching it. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. But then, the dot began to grow. "Misha, look!" I nudged my friend. We peered hard and realized the dot was slowly moving toward us. "Maybe a dog?" I asked. "Could be a dog," Misha said nervously. Meanwhile, the dot had grown significantly. A minute later, I screamed, "Drive!" I didn't fully comprehend what I was seeing yet, but it wasn't a dog. It was something else. Whatever was running toward us from the left was moving on two legs. The horse was running as hard as it could, saving itself and our lives. I prayed for a miracle that it wouldn't stumble, as the snow was deep. It was a person, very tall, and it was running just slightly slower than the horse. It was literally 5 meters away from us, coming at full tilt. At one point, it nearly managed to grab the edge of the sled, and that's when I got a good look at it. The creature's massive eyes started nearly at its forehead and ended near its nose. It had a huge pupil, surrounded by a bright yellow iris. It felt like it could see right through you. It had a strange, fixed expression on its face that filled me with such terror, I was ready to jump out of the sled and fly ahead of it. That bug-eyed thing chased us for 20 minutes. I kept thinking it wouldn't stop, that it would follow us to the very village, or that the horse would simply collapse and we'd be doomed. But apparently, its strength wasn't infinite, and it started to lag. But the most terrifying part, grandson, was the eyes. They were huge, ugly, and frightening. A parody of a human, which is exactly what that creature was not. I am certain it has claimed many lives. It will stand with its back to you, somewhere in a field or a forest, and start yawning. You approach it, and it's already too late. You can't run. You can't hide. It will find you, catch anyone, and devour them. We were lucky our horse was a clever one. A different one might have fallen halfway, and they would have found 2 more bodies in the field.
The next morning. "So, how was the story?" Grandfather asked. "But where did it go?" I asked, nearly bouncing with curiosity. "I don't know. It came from somewhere and went somewhere else. Maybe it's roaming the woods, waiting for someone to pass by so it can eat them? Or maybe it finally died. It's been so many years now. So, shall I tell you another one?" "Yes," I said, looking at him with interest. "Well, this happened in the fall, when I was harvesting mushrooms. I went out just as it started to get light, thinking I'd be home by noon. I was walking through the forest, picking mushrooms, lost in my own thoughts. The idea that I could get lost in our forest was unthinkable. I had walked it up and down, so I could have found my way out even in the dark. It was my forest, after all. But apparently, the Leshy decided to play with me. I can't explain it any other way.
I started walking in circles. I thought, I'll turn my clothes inside out and the path will reveal itself. I did it and walked in the direction of home. But as I walked, like a fool in inside-out clothes, I realized the area was unfamiliar. I thought, that's it. The Leshy is angry. He's gonna lead me around until I die, or he sets beasts on me. I kept walking through the forest, leaves crunching, wondering how to get out. I decided to keep walking until nightfall. If it got dark, I wouldn't build a fire, but climb a tree and spend the night there. Building a fire is risky. Who knows what might come to the light? You sit by a fire, thinking you're safe, but in the forest, especially in autumn, that doesn't work. You have to be quiet and hidden. Fire doesn't just scare things away. It can attract the attention of those you shouldn't meet. As I walked, I saw it. Just 15 meters ahead, there was a hut in a clearing. It looked quite well kept. You could see someone lived there. Being a fool, instead of looking around, I ran straight to it. Oh, finally, people! They would help! But as I reached the hut, I saw the door was boarded up with crossed planks. A terrible realization settled in my mind, but I hoped for the best. I circled the hut, weighed the pros and cons, and thought, I'll rip off the boards and see what's inside. If it's fine,
I'll spend the night. I ripped off the boards and, with a trembling heart, pushed the door. It creaked so loudly, I thought I'd be traumatized for life. When it opened, I went inside. In the twilight, I could make out a large stove, a sturdy table, 2 benches, and a few odds and ends. There was nothing else. I thought maybe someone had died here, and they just boarded it up and left. But I was lucky. There was no one home. I had only 2 choices: hide behind the stove or sleep on the table, right in front of the window. While I stood thinking, it got completely dark. I decided I wouldn't sleep in the house. I'd sit it out on the roof. I didn't want to corner myself. I climbed onto the roof and lay there, half dead from fear. The bad feeling didn't go away. About 3 hours later, I heard the front door open. Slowly. Everything went quiet. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe an animal. 5 minutes passed, and then a crash broke out inside the hut that nearly made me fall off the roof. Someone was clearly furious that I wasn't inside. Then, the creak of the door again, and footsteps running away into the forest. I passed out from the shock, grandson. The most curious thing I found in the morning. I woke up on the roof. My body so stiff, it took me half an hour just to climb down. When I did, the fear was gone. I walked to the door of the hut and peeked in. The table and benches were smashed. A piece of the stove was broken off. Wood chips were scattered everywhere. And in the center of the room stood a coffin on 4 stumps, with a corpse inside. I took off running as fast as I could. I walked for about 5 hours, thinking I was going to die out there, but I got lucky and found a small village. When I told the locals what happened, they just sighed and shook their heads. They said I was lucky, but they never told me what that hut was or who lay in that coffin. So, have you had enough stories? Grandfather asked. No, tell me that one again, I said, pulling the blanket up to my eyes. And tell me one even scarier. Scarier? Well, that can be done, Grandfather said, and began the next story. It was the middle of the day, beautiful summer weather, and I was home alone. Your grandmother had gone to the city, and I was left to look after the farm. I went outside and started working in the yard, weeding the garden, chopping wood, tending to the beehives. A couple of hours later, I decided to go in and rest. I was walking toward the house from the backyard, lost in thought, when I glanced at the window. A curtain twitched. It jerked very hard. The wind couldn't have done that. I saw it so clearly that I couldn't brush it off as a trick of the light. I stopped, stunned. What was that? Outside, birds were singing. Neighbors were working in their gardens. I looked at it all and thought, what could possibly happen in broad daylight? I went to the house, opened the door, and walked in. There was no one to be seen, and the spot where the curtain had moved didn't look any different from the rest. I walked around, checked everything, and thought, must be my imagination. There was no one here to move curtains in an empty house. I thought maybe a Domovoi was playing tricks, moving things or hiding them. I worried for an hour or two, then forgot about it. About a week later, I was home alone again. To stave off boredom, I went into the yard to mow the grass. I picked up the scythe and started. After a while, I felt someone staring at my back. The gaze was so intense, I shivered and turned around. Standing in our window, with its face pressed against the glass, looking at me, was me. Sallow lips stretched into a madman's smile, bulging eyes, scabs peeling on its cheeks and forehead. I shrieked and blinked. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing there, just the curtain swaying slowly. I gave up on the chores and climbed the fence to my neighbor's house. I told him what I saw. Before helping, he shared a strange observation. Don't panic, Stepan. It's a thing. He can't really do much about it. Why's that? Well, look, my granddaughter visits. She draws pictures and shows them to me. I started noticing she drew a cat, a huge cat. I asked her why she was drawing a cat, and we don't have one. She said, what do you mean? It's one there.
I ran out of the house, just like you did. I took my granddaughter back to look for this cat. I searched the whole house, but found nothing. My granddaughter kept saying, "Don't, the cat is good. It protects me from the babekas at night." I nearly went gray. If the cat is good, what are these babekas she's afraid of? And did you solve the problem? I asked. Believe it or not, I went down into the cellar at night where the babekas supposedly live and saw for myself that they weren't there. After that, it just stopped. We checked my house. We found no one. He insisted I go down into the cellar, but the advice felt wrong. Why at night? Why not during the day? Instead of going down, I boarded up the cellar door with nails and weighed it down. In the middle of the night, I heard a thud, then another. I realized something was trying to break out. We spent the rest of the night on the porch until dawn. When the sun rose, we went inside. The house was fine. Whatever was trying to break out hadn't managed to. But I went to tell my neighbor. I walked into his house, but it was empty. Doors wide open, as if no one lived there. A strange feeling told me to look in the cellar. I looked down and found my neighbor. His head had been torn off, lying under the stairs. His insides turned out. As it turned out, his granddaughter hadn't been there for 3 days. I still shiver at the thought. Who was I talking to that day? Cool story, I said, looking at my grandfather with wide eyes. Maybe one more? No, grandson. I've told you too much already. I don't even know how you're going to sleep tonight. Just one, please, I said, sensing that I definitely wasn't going to sleep tonight. All right, just one, and that's it for today, grandfather said, and began his story. It happened a long time ago. I was a guest at a wedding. A lot of people came. It was a grand event. But the wedding was unusual. The girl getting married was whispered about behind her back as the witch's daughter. It was a huge event. Everyone was invited. Friends, relatives, acquaintances. I was invited, even though I had no connection to them. I wasn't a relative. I hadn't even seen the bride before. I'd only heard rumors that she was a witch from a nearby village, possessing unusual beauty. That was all I knew. But it was strange. People were invited from all the villages, and everyone talked about the bride. But no one had heard a word about the groom. Some said he was from the city, others that he was a relative. But in truth, no one had ever laid eyes on him. But who thinks about such things? Who thinks about the fact that she's a witch's daughter? Everyone was thinking about dancing, drinking, and gifts. I was, too. When we arrived at the village, I realized this wasn't a wedding. This was a phenomenon. There were so many people, you couldn't get into the house. There wasn't even room in the yard. Tables were set out on the road, piled with food the likes of which your grandfather had never seen. People were devouring it, grabbing with their hands, stuffing their pockets, behaving like they were starving. Despite the festive atmosphere, I and others noticed one thing: the complete absence of relatives on the groom's side. It was odd, especially given the scale of the wedding. No single family, however wealthy, could afford this. And the groom? No one knew where he was from or who he was. But the people were partying, and those little details were forgotten. Late at night, as people were leaving, I sat at the table and noticed something interesting. A few people came out of the house with food in their hands and carried it somewhere. 40 minutes later, they returned, and 5 minutes after that, they left again with more food. Guys, I said, let's see where they're taking this food. There's nothing but forest. Let's, another man said. The others just shrugged and kept drinking. We walked past the dancing crowd, hopped over the fence, and saw 3 people walking along a path far from the village, loaded down with food. By the way, I asked, when was the last time you saw the bride and groom? Not for a long time. 4 hours, at least, my partner replied. Maybe they're walking in the forest, I thought to myself. We followed them for at least half an hour, trying to be as quiet as possible. Soon, we didn't need to look for them. From the left, we heard shouting, laughter, howling, and other incomprehensible sounds. We crept into the bushes near a small clearing. At the table, I saw the bride. She was beautiful and dressed up, her mother sitting next to her. But the groom and the guests shocked us. Horned devils were jumping, screeching, hissing, and doing God knows what. They roared something unintelligible, and the bride looked affectionately at her horned husband. I couldn't watch anymore. It was sickening. We decided to slip away from that clearing, where all the evil spirits had gathered to celebrate their wedding. As I ran, 2 thoughts spun in my head. That's why there were no relatives on the groom's side. That's where all the food and money came from. And that's why the whole neighborhood was invited. To distract the people while the spirits held their own celebration in the